What's up, guys, and welcome back to Gabe Music. Today we're taking a look at the making of my latest song. This is Entropy. It's a progressive house track I produced in collaboration with Kyla. I'll leave a link to his Soundcloud in the description. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play the second half of the drop because it has more going on. And then I'm going to build it up piece by piece and then go into more detail on some of the individual elements. So here we go. So let's start off with the drums, and real quick, as you can see, I have this, pretty much all of this rendered down to WAV files, because we both work in different DAWs, and so the best way to collaborate with someone who doesn't work in the same DAW as you is to bounce down stems, and then fire them back and forth, make modifications, add stuff, switch stuff out, change out elements, all that kind of stuff, and so that's what we did here. So let's start off with a kick, snare, clap. Get back to that clap in a second though, because I have another clap layered. They both complement each other. And this is one of the places where the stems come into play. These drop cymbals are a whole bunch of elements all bounced together, so. And they're a little more stripped down in the first section of the drop. So that is basically a ride cymbal playing along with the kick, 4 on the floor, and then a side-chained kind of whoosh sound, this little that sounds kind of like the sustain from a ride cymbal. And there's also an impact sound in there as well. And then the second half got a crash cymbal with a fair amount of delay on it, so instead of just a psh, it goes psh, psh, psh. And also that has a decent amount of reverb on it, I believe, as well. So, crash. And then a hi-hat, and the hi-hat is side-chained to keep it out of the way it kicks, so it comes in like that, kind of has this rocking back and forth feel. So let me build that back up. And then as you can see, what I did with these claps is I have them playing this little pattern. And I have these separated in different audio files because I wanted these to be a little louder, a little more prominent, so you can hear that little rhythmic thing. But then every other instance of the clap, have it be a little more back in the mix so it doesn't fight too much with the kick. So it sticks out. So we got that. Then the other clap. Here, those cymbals are what are carrying a lot of that energy, at least of the drums. And from there, we add on the bass. So those here. So I got 2 basses. And then this one. I have a fair amount of processing on this one. It's kind of a basic saw bass. And I have this run through a bass amp plugin and some distortion. And of course, these are pretty much everything on here side-chained to some degree. So you layer them both, and they complement each other. You can see I have this little tape stop effect. The way I did this in Logic, they allow you to take an audio file and cross-fade it out, except they allow you to change the fade to a slowdown, and that's what I did here, and just moved it around a bit to get the timing right. And I know that the tape stop effect is a little cliche in terms of this genre, but the purpose it serves is not just to sound cool, although I do dig the way it sounds. The main purpose is to add a little moment of silence because you have, 2 basses, a piano, super saws, which I'll get into in a second, a lead, a bunch of drums. It's a lot of noise all thrown at you at once, this wall of sound. And so the purpose of the tape stop is to give your ears a break. So some stuff drops out and then it comes back in, and there's contrast there, so it's not just this mushy wall of sound. It's got clarity to it because you have these little breaks. So right here, just the lead, and if I take away the lead, there's like nothing playing pretty much. So just strips it down to that clap and those cymbals, and so that keeps it dynamic, I guess you could say. So let's dive in. So we got the basses, and then we got a piano. This is also sidechained, and it's playing, it's not dun, dun, it's actually just playing dun, 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 dun. And so when you sidechain it, you get this kind of rocking back and forth effect once again. And then same goes for the supersaws. You can hear I furthered that rocking down effect by having the chord progression kind of switch back and forth between that one note. So you have all this. And that's a lot of what's carrying that's all the chords. That's what's carrying the drop. And then finally we've got the lead, which I'm going to come back to the lead because I made the lead in a separate session file, of course, and so I could show you all of what went into it, because this is at least 3 layers. I'll have to check to remember exactly how many there are, but here's the lead. And this is also sidechained, but I do want to point out right now that it's sidechained less than the bass and the chords elements are. So they're at different levels of sidechaining, so it sticks out a bit more, kind of sits on top of the mix more than the chord playing elements. We got to sweep down. That's the drop. And once again, I get back to the lead, but I want to go into the breakdown. So the way Kyla and I did the track was I started out with the drop and the melody, the chord progression, and I believe I had the piano, some super saws, and the lead kind of in progress, and a rudimentary bass. And so I sent it to him, and he fleshed out some of the elements, fleshed out the bass, fleshed out some of the other elements, made some mix tweaks, switched out some elements, and then sent it back to me. And then I did a mix of it, got everything sitting well, and then from there, while I was getting that going, he was getting a breakdown going, fires that my way, and by the time I've got this mix the way I like it, he's got a breakdown and a build going. And then what I did was went ahead and just made a few little mix tweaks, some automation, add some automation and stuff like that, some mix tweaks to the breakdown, and then added a bunch of stuff to the build, and then went ahead and made the second breakdown, which went into basically the same drop. And then I finished up the mix, mastered it, and that is the track. So let's go into the intro. So we got an ARP. And this is one of the mix tweaks I'm talking about. I put on some filtering. So over time, comes in like that. And then on top of that, I should probably just go ahead and loop this. There we go. Piano. Once again, lifting that low cut. So it starts off as this kind of muffled, distant sounding pad, kind of vaguely piano-y element, and then gets more defined as time goes on. And this is, I believe, a piano and a pad rendered down together. Kind of a saw-based pad. This first part of the breakdown, that's it. Then we got some sweeps and risers and such like. So this is where we introduce the lead for the first time, and I have a significant amount of filtering on that. The kick and the claps. And also I have the saws subtly layered in here as well. And they're filtered in as well. So it's to prepare you for later on when the saws come in. It doesn't sound completely different. There's some similarity between this breakdown and the drop. And then we got the kick. What I've done is I've LFO'd 2 on it. So basically I shorten the kick by a ton, so it's just kind of this little punchy element, and then some lows pretty significantly cut. We got a fair amount of processing on the lead as well. So we build, and also the kind of the real bass comes in for the first time, except with a decent amount of highs cut, so that doesn't come in fully until the drop. So we go into the build. This is a combination of risers, sweeps, and other such things, and elements actually from the drop, although a lot of them are processed pretty heavily. So I'm actually going to just build it up piece by piece. A lot going on here, so let me start off with the ARP. Put this on loop here. So once again, have this functioning kind of like a bandpass filter. And what happens as time goes on, I have this pitch plugin automated to go up and pitch. And then what I did with the bass, which I actually did with a few other elements, is I have it playing the first chord in the progression. And then, of course, once again, it filters in. For the first half of it, it plays only the first chord in the progression. That builds tension, and then you feel this kind of sense of release when it plays the rest of the progression. But by then, all the sweeps are coming in, and so it's building and building more tension, and also preparing you for the drop, so it's not this completely jarring difference when the drop comes in. You've heard the elements before, but then they come in fully in the drop. And so that's kind of the reasoning behind that. And I also did the same with the piano, I believe. So that's playing one chord. Goes in the progression. As you can hear, also I have a low cut filter automated to cut out all the lows, to get them completely out of the way of all the risers, and to build up the energy, which is a pretty common technique to use a lot of low cuts in builds, so when the bass comes back in, it kicks you in the face. And with the saws, I just have them playing the chord, and then I just pitch them up as... which sounds pretty gross by itself, but it also filters out of the way, and then in combination with the stuff, it just adds to the overall chaotic nature of the build. We got a snare. And got a high cut on that. That automates itself out of the way. And then filters it out a bit. Got a sweep down. Then, of course, the lead, like I mentioned earlier, and this is filtered pretty heavily to where you can't even hear it at first. And this has got a significant amount of extra reverb on it as well. And another impact. And then finally, a few different riser elements, so... get back to that little part in a second. That element's pretty important. I have a reverb on this so that it fades out to get out of the way for this little fill. I also have an impact along with the fill. So everything gets out of the way for the fill because you're building, you have all this noise going on, and to create contrast and to add extra tension, you drop everything out except for the build, and then so that's why the reverbs are, to make that dropping out more smooth, basically. So you have everything drop out except for that little fill, and then the gigantic snare brings you back in. So that's this right here. So you got... And that takes you into the drop. Okay, I'm going to switch session files here to get us into the session file so I can show you what I did for layering leads, and then we will conclude the video. All right, so here's the other session file and much earlier session file in the creative process, and here's some of the work I did. I'm going to go into the super saws, and I'm going to go into the lead. So let's start with the lead because I had a couple people request that. So here's what it sounds like by itself. Go ahead and take off that side chaining for now. So that is 4 different elements. So this one is a Nexus preset. And you can tell it's doing quite a bit of the heavy lifting. We got one for added punch. So you have them together. This one's mainly for the attack it provides. This is more of a pluck. And that's in massive. And then finally one that's an octave down. Kind of a more buzzy lead. Then you put it through a LFO tool, pumping it a bit. And that is the lead. I didn't really do a whole lot of synthesis by myself here. I worked mostly from presets in this case. And then let me go into the super saws because there was actually a bit more going on than I remembered when I was working in the final session file. So here we go. There's actually 3 different elements layered together. So here's the main one. And I have these 2 other elements which are panned pretty far left and right. And they're all slightly different patches, and they complement each other, so when they're all slightly different, then you pan them all out, you end up with a much wider sound, and then I have even more processing to bring out more width, so there's this one, and then this one. This one's doing a lot of the work, as you can hear. And then all together, and then I also have a spreader on here to widen them out even more. Alright, that is it for today. Don't forget to check out Kyla on Soundcloud. Once again, I have a link to that in the description. Be sure to click that and give a listen to his music. You can follow me on Twitter at GabeMellyMusic, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all the other good stuff. I'm Gabe, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace out.